it says it's being.
I like how they in the line.
We've known each other 40 years, you understand? Thank you. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Congregation Shir Shalom. For those of you who are coming from Zoom, you cannot see this lovely sanctuary and the things that surround us here, but I think you may be able to feel them. So welcome, whether you're here in person. I see a lot of Buffalo riders and supporters of riders. Um, we will all tonight miss our co-host, Irene Cyprus is on her way south of the border to celebrate her only son's wedding. So I think we just have to, put up with it for this one time. We hope she has a safe journey. She might actually be zooming in at some point, and a wonderful couple of days in the sun. So you guys who braved the dark and stormy night, I'm very grateful you are here. I want to thank Congregation Shir Shalom for hosting us, Rabbi Alex for his support and involvement, Executive Director Joanne Marquesi for her support, and she always makes sure I get the photos for those posters in on time. Now that's a person you can trust. As always, we appreciate the tech help provided tonight by Dr. Daniel Kester, whom I've known for 40 years this month. He is in control of Spaceship Buffalo Corner to all of you zooming in from afar. I wanted to say something before we get started, something reasonably intelligent about the new Nobel laureate, Annie Ernaux from France. But I'm afraid her books have not yet arrived, either in English, French, or Swedish. You know, you can't win the Nobel Prize unless you get translated into Swedish. If you need to be on the list, you can ask me. Ask you for so any writer who is described to me as intimate, true to memory, loyal to her working class background, rooted in the female body and its many experiences, and private, will immediately interest this reader. France has had a long and very interesting history with the intersection between femininity, language, philosophy, and sociology. In my lifetime, I remember Simone de Beauvoir, who was the one who wrote the one famous sentence, you all know it, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Now, I want all of you to think about that for the next week or two. Also, during the Algerian War of Independence, when I was about, going up toward 10 years old or so, in the 1960s, Gisèle Halimi, who was a Tunisian-born Jew, she ran away from an arranged marriage in Tunisia when she was 16, alone, to France, and became a lawyer. And she later went to Algeria during the civil war there to defend an Arab woman, the Algerian woman, Jamila Boupacha, whom the French accused of being a terrorist, while she claimed she was raped and tortured by the French colonial soldiers. There's a slim little volume, I think I've read it 10 times. It is horrifying. There was also writers in France as diverse in background and field of study as Louis Irigaray from Belgium, Jacques Lacan, Hélène Cixous from Algeria, Julia Kristeva from Bulgaria, and Jacques Derrida, you know, who was born in France. And when the Gestapo came for his parents, his grandmother took him to Algeria. Do you know this story? He's become such a famous philosopher. I don't know if he's still alive. But he and his grandmother lived in a huge Jewish ghetto in Algiers. When the
Hey, Zoom. You probably know us for our meetings.
German officer
Here's a few things you might not know. You can transform your home office into a personal.
Something is talking here, maybe, yeah. Please mute if you're zooming in. So anyways, the German friend, officer said, empty the whole ghetto, take everybody, but spare this house. And so Jacques Derrida survived and became probably the 20th century's most famous philosopher. And I don't say that lightly. So there's a whole history, I'm saying, in France, blending the different ways that you can explore the personal, memory, the body, and language. And I grew up on these ideas in Sweden, and now I cannot wait to read the, to me, new voice in this illustrious choir. I hope to have some more things to say about her actual writing next time. So anyways, now I would like to invite Rabbi Alex to read a poem or two and briefly perhaps talk about your new book. Well, didn't you do something with your sermons? Or, no? Whatever you want to talk about. It's your
Thank you, Gunilla. And it's so great to be here on this new season at Buffalo Corner Reading Series. What you see over here is the Jewish world. We just finished our Feast of Booths, our Sukkot holiday, which is the end of our High Holy Day season. And so this is the best week, really, for rabbis and cantors anywhere, because we're finished. Our high holidays are done. So given that we just had our major season just a week ago, I thought I'd read an older poem. This is from my book, Wildflowers and Fireflies, and it's called The Last Hill. My dad, he loves to bike, and he would take my sister and I on really long bike rides, and we could never keep up. So that's what this is about. One more hill, my father yells from the rear of our group. The biking club is filled with people equipped with proper biking gear. They streak by, seemingly unencumbered by the Earth's gravitational pull. My sister and I, on the other hand, push up the winding road, dreading the elevation. Cars zoom by us as we teeter on the edge of the road. Slowly, a top emerges, and we collapse into the cement. We are off again. They had waited for us long enough. For a stretch, other hills appear, up and down, until we cannot help feeling like a yo-yo. The gears in my bike squeak with age. I'm ready to remove myself from this contraption. We catch up to my father. Only one more hill, he repeats. What were those optical illusions? But he is gone again, leaving us to navigate the roads. We were both walking our bikes at this latest challenge, feeling defeated. I realized my father and I might have a different definition of what a hill is. Awkwardly, back on the bike, I pedal into the center of the road, a car nearly knocking me over. But I will my body to push on, eventually reaching the top. Everyone else already there, twiddling their thumbs. Only 2 more hills, my father says now. He is sure of it. We laugh, knowing there is always another hill to climb.
So we are here in our sanctuary, and normally we don't applaud in the sanctuary, but if we really like something, we do this. So if you see somebody doing this, they're not crazy, they're just applauding the Jewish way, right? Oh, I never knew that. You learn something new every day. And now it is my very distinct pleasure to introduce an old friend, Rookie Zuckerman, who is the author of Looking for Bora Bora and 7 chapbooks, including The Gone Artists and The 3 Poems. Her poems have appeared in Patterson Literary Review, Slipstream, Lips, Ghost City Review, Blazewalks, and other journals and anthologies. She is a co-editor of Earth's Daughters magazine and curates the Literary Cafe at Center for Inquiry. Her poem, Nomenclature, was displayed in the Just Buffalo Literary Center's NAFTA On the Move public poetry project in 21 and 22. So these were poems chosen here in Buffalo, and they're displayed right on bus stops and in buses and trains. It was a really cool project. If you want to mention anything about it, please.
Mine was on a bus stop.
Oh,
It's
come.
on side the buses, inside the buses, train station.
Please, it's your turn. You make a speak in the microphone. We'll all hear
Into
you.
the microphone.
Would you rather have a seat there, or do you want to stand?
No, I can stand. Thank you. I don't really have room to put my stuff down now. David, thing, here, okay. Is that all right, David? Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you see me?
Sorry,
Oh, there I am.
Rookie. Can you would you
Oh,
like
okay.
this? Will it be helpful?
Except then I won't be facing that. Whatever you
And,
want. Unless you put it like here.
At least one person said they, if we can make it louder, which we can, so there's a microphone in here that you can talk loud that it hears you.
Okay.
So have this so they don't block the microphones.
All right. How's that?
Yep.
Perfect. Yes, it's on. Hello, everybody. Those of you who are here, thank you for coming. Oh, hello. So let's see. The poem Nomenclature was in a city. I guess it was a city. It was at Kenmore and Elmwood. So it was technically it was in Kenmore, and it was in the bus stop. And I have to thank Ida Gecko because she's the first person who found it and took a photo of it so on, because they didn't tell us where they were going to be. Anyway, I'm going to be reading that poem. I'm going to start off with a poem from Looking for Bora Bora. Interlude. I only meant to get a little to tide me over. But as I stood in the blue day, bright with crisp fall sunshine, a young couple walked by, and their hands, their voices meshed together, as if their lives and the flame of their heat would always intertwine. I went to forever with them for a moment, and by the time I remembered what I was doing at the pump, my tank was full. Patrick, could you do me a big favor and bring me that little water bottle? Thank you. Noble tall one. Thank you. I will attempt not to pour it onto inadvertently on any electronic equipment. Okay?
Would you like to use mine? Coming through here.
The universe unfolding.
I'll leave it
Given
here.
3 wishes, what would you change? You ask for rain, and the floods come. You ask for it to stop raining, and drought parches the earth. You ask for evil to be eradicated, and all human life disappears. And then, unfortunately, you are out of wishes. Out into the darkness. This was written on the occasion of Voyager, having been, I guess it was 50 years since it had been sent out into the far reaches of outer space. Out into the darkness. Far, far away. 12.9 billion miles beyond the count of skipping rope. A golden record of the sounds and sights of the planet Earth we are so fond of. Gold. A thing that never rusts, holding the beats of a human heart, the lilt of a child's laughter, a whale song of the fog, the whisper of the wind on the flutes of a nomadic tribe. The roar of Saturn V lifting off, a Navajo night chant, a mother and child, the Alimo song by Mbutu of the Ituri rainforest, all that you might hear us. Voyager has taken it all to interstellar space, the dark end of the universe. We have never seen, except in our imagination, where we expect some other intelligence will access our old 70s technology and have some way of seeing and hearing what we want them to know of us and our distant locus. We hope they are a gentle species and do not use the information we have sent them to come and wreak havoc in our corner of the galaxy. After all, we have been doing such a good job of that ourselves. Oh. Let's see. A little light one here. Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm fond of dinosaurs. It's my favorite dinosaur, you know. If any little kids around any time in your life, you know, they want to know what your favorite dinosaur is. So, Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is actually Mr. Rex is talking in this one. Why do they always show me with my mouth open, snarling, a mouth breather, vicious, gleam in eye? Why do they make fun of my small upper arms, whose petiteness balances my yin-yang? It wounds me to be so maligned. Come closer and stroke my neck to console me. You look delicious. I have a fondness of thrifting. And Paula knows about that. She's one of the people who sent me off to one of these places because of a picture that she put up on Facebook. Anyway, this is one of the items that I found or got fond of and what it has to say. Rhinestone brooch. I am yours now. Put me on your blouse. Pin me at your shoulder. I will add a twinkle to your chemise. I am yours now. I am yours now. A sparkle on a gray day. An heirloom sent to the thrift store after she faded away. I am yours now. I am yours now. My destiny spans decades. I greeted the war pilot returned from France. I scintillated at many a soiree. I am yours. I am yours now. I will serve you well. I will be cherished, praised, and you will think it is you. I am yours now. I am yours now. But, although you don't know it yet, not for long. assume you're all familiar with Mondrian, the artist Mondrian. So, a couple of years ago, Ed Cardone of Howell went to San Francisco and he put up a picture of a cake that they served there. Which is like one of Mondrian's famous pieces. Eating Mondrian at MoMA, San Francisco. He would have been very old now had he lasted and toothless. He'd need to take his cake, mashed or pureed, deprived of seeing his masterpiece interpreted in gâteau. I'd be happy to be his taster and not fear for any poison slipped in, but sample the rectangles of red velvet, vanilla, and chocolate ganache till the entire painting was contained within me, where it might revert back to the limbs of trees he began with before he filtered out details, nearly all line, in everything but a few blocks of color, allowing me to eat his cake and have it too. Now I'm afraid we're going to move on to more serious poems. Of course, this is a pandemic poem. I kid you not. I hug you not. After all, I don't want to kill you with my exhalation, even though I am not one of those coughers. Even though I seem well enough, I keep my hugs in my arm, ready for a future time. Even though you are alone, you are not alone. Read an ad in the New Yorker, I think for a bank. You know, those corporations are good at stealing the language of concern, even though they only want your money. They'd be happy for you to think they are your friend, albeit the friend who would be happy to rob you blind. Even though the blindness is theirs, the distorted intent to defraud you of your money, your hard-earned dollars. And sense, your starving skin and sense of well-being, your deficit of hugs. You're never alone could be a good thing, unless it's the tagline for a horror movie, and in any case, you'd better be careful. The monster is invisible and always nearby, waiting to hug you. This poem was in the Buffalo News in the old days when we had poems in the Buffalo News. And Bob Cole put it on his Facebook page today because to mention that I was reading tonight. It was also in Ghost City Review last year. Restoration. I have been working to restore the glistening edge of dew on the newly minted leaves and ensure that the sunset will spill onto the horizon even longer than ever in the past before the event. I will beseech the inconsolate to curl up under the quilt of moonbeams and sleep deeply, dreaming of their lost loved ones as if they were still breathing. Let the silver coins that were placed there drop away from every set of eyelids. Let the plague doctor hear only silence when he shouts, "Bring out the bodies." For when I am crowned queen of lost causes, I will bring back the dead. I am guilty of not having watched the time at all. I am so sorry. I'm supposed to stay within it. Keep going, stop, run out of here screaming, what do you want? Anybody watch the time? A little more? A little more.
I didn't watch the time.
Pardon?
I didn't watch it.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to read the poem that was in the bus shelter. Nomenclature. I wrote this after reading about how whales have hearts that are 6 feet wide. And I thought, if only people could be, that magnanimous. And I thought, well, we need a new language to describe that. So, nomenclature. Let us all have the heart of a blue whale, 6 feet wide. But 6 humans lifelong breaths wide, 6 year lengths on the horizon wide, 6 ocean wave crest wide, 6 millennia of tears wide, 6 ghost schooners of old wide, 6 million gasps of awe wide, 6 volumetric apexes wide, 6 harmonic chord cycles reverberating wide, 6 holy rooms for kindnesses wide, 6 C-SPAN's sense of majesty wide. So should I stop? I'm stopping now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out on this blustery day. And hello and goodbye, everybody out there. I hope you enjoyed it. I actually brought my phone up to time myself and never did.
Here, I'm bringing you water. There is water outside. Water we are allowed in here, food we try to avoid. Although I raised 2 daughters in this sanctuary, and sometimes they're smuggled in some. Sorry, Rabbit.
My kids did the same.
So I was really thrilled by the 6-chord deep. I know we have some musicians here, and they certainly took that part in. Thank you, Rookie. That was really, it was a lot of fun. I don't think I have appreciated the humorous edge of your writing as much before as I have today. So before I introduce Tom Daly, I see you here on the screen, I will read 2 poems I wrote in his class. He teaches a Zoom class, or 2 or 3, I don't know. That's the good thing about the pandemic, that we have been able to reach out and find each other in groups. And I'm learning a lot in this class. Tom Daly is a man who can deliver severe criticism in the kindest of manners. And you don't realize until after, it's like, what? He said, what about that line? And he can also all of a sudden burst out laughing. I'm sure Rookie appreciated a lot of the humor in your poems tonight. And one thing he has taught the class recently is that there is an American sonnet. Now, how many of you did know that? I mean, I learned about the Elizabethan, the Shakespearean, the Italian, the Petrarchan, and the rhyme schemes, and the this and the that. But there is an anti-colonial American sonnet that got rid of all the I ams and the feet and the meter and the rhyme schemes, and all it needs is 14 lines. So this has been my 2 latest poems. You see, it becomes kind of like a box, 14 rather long lines, and no extravagant features. This one is called 7th Grade at Mud Stream Middle. Mud Stream Middle is an exact translation of the name of my middle school in Sweden, Lerbäcksskolan. And I have several of these poems. He's a little weasel of a boy with freckles and sharp teeth, who does not sparkle, but knows how to buoy. Clomp, clomp, clomp. he shouts after my sister when she walks into her 9th grade class in her Israeli boots made of paper, but looking military tough. And something breaks inside of me, like a big glass window blown out in an explosion. I feel something clean, sharp and shiny, rise like a sickle of the moon on my father's reaping hook. I grab a big shard from within and lick its edge to feel the cutting power. Tasting blood, I run down the stairs 3 steps at a time and use my momentum to jump on top of him, like the wild cat used to leap off the roof of our house when I called her for pieces of bread soaked in milk. She kept her claws away from me. But I have mine ready. Shiny razors, I will not let him go. For years he spits on the sidewalk when he sees me. And here's another attempt at this new form. I'll tell you, you should try it. It's very liberating. The best is when I kick open the side door and meet a mist woven like a Berber carpet, hiding a pool of mud I discovered too late, slipping, and the bucket of peels from last night's dinner kicked over by the wild rabbit with ears longer than my fingers, or the groundhog, knowing I'm about as smooth as a number 60 grit sandpaper. The only one awake I see in the sudden rain we needed and didn't expect. The almond tree come closer, deep alabaster blooms filling like cups, fog stirring branches, and my body under the trees, rubbing against stones, our home suddenly dark inside, lit by slanted outside beams. While I keep an eye on our fences, I wish I could put my hand in the bird bath filled with leaves, mustard smell of stagnant water, wanting to stretch my body among waves, eloquent, free of these spaces. Thank you. And now it is my distinct pleasure, thank you, to introduce Tom Daly, who I said is my teacher. If you ever need an Inspire class, you might want to contact him. We also fellow Tar Heels, he and I, both graduates from Chapel Hill University, which is kind of an odd thing to find in the world. So Tom Daly is the recipient of the Dana Award in Poetry. He's the author of House You Cannot Reach, Poems in the Voice of My Mother and Other Poems, published by Future Cycle Press. His chapbook, Far Cry, was released in 2022, and it was my intent to bring a copy of it because he sent me one. It's a beautiful book, and this artist, whoever did the cover, it's very lovely. So I'll bring it next time so you can all take a look at it. His poems have appeared in many journals, including North American Review, Harvard Review, Massachusetts Review, Denver Quarterly, and Prairie Schooner, just to name a few. He leads writing workshops, as I have mentioned now a few times, in the Boston area, and online for poets and writers working in creative prose and poetry. And here he is. Daniel, will you make sure we can see you better? Welcome, Tom. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Gunilla. Can you guys hear me? If you
One
could.
second, please.
Okay.
Let's say something. Let's see if we can hear you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Pardon me? Try again.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gunilla, for that very fine introduction. And I appreciate your inviting me to read tonight. And thank you to Ricky Zuckerman for that wonderfully charming and affecting reading. I'm going to be reading tonight from my chapbook, which Gunilla mentioned. This is Far Cry. The artwork was actually done by me. That's a rubber stamp, lino cut, and my calligraphy. The rubber stamp is of houses in Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood called Mount Pleasant, where some of these poems take place. The poems were written in the aftermath of the death of a very good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine named Phil Herbert, who died in 2020. And Phil and I had been friends since 1975. And in the last few years of his life, we had become estranged. The death of Phil was a double blow to me, because not only was there the loss of the friend, but also the loss of any opportunity to heal the rift. The first poem I'm going to be reading is called Obituary Picture. Your dear and dangerous mouth is open to the sunlight. In your red jersey and perfectly white t-shirt, you are a cardinal on holiday. No mistake that you boasted that the bishop who baptized you later elected a pope. Your teeth are touching. They might be turning forgiveness or trust into a fine powder. You are the chosen vessel of an elixir that ferments the act of seeing into a love that scours, an infection that needles and cleanses. The angle at which your neck supports your skull leans your caution into the courage with which you have withstood the sprightly chatter of the death wish. They called you the plant healer, but every fingertip that picked away the mealy bugs might later squish to soup the gnats that long to drink the wisdom from the fluid of your impatient, sun-loving eye. Gay blade, I think of you with your blister and your splinter. I think of your tongue, green with covetousness and love. I think of your teeth fixed on the good seasons, your breath with its ripening repair, your knack at incantations planting the pleasurable sun. How delicate the skin was on your shoulder blades. Any fierce hug would set it astir with hurt fire ants, scrambling themselves into pockets and pores. Here, old contender, bring me your scalding sachet. Bring me your scolding sense of the proper alignment of recent trends and thermals and socks. Your eye always split between nasturtiums and hawks. Bring me your pie crusts, always crumbly with stamen sweet or berry sour forecasts. Your weather forever channeling itself into the exhausted vessels that ventilated but barely furnished the corners and parlors of your marvelously clever yet querulous heart. Lost and found, a helicopter's propeller blades are battering the currents of the dawn. They are rifling for something on the sidewalk, but it can't be you, caged in the crematorium, all your footfalls done for, all your slicing shade cataloged and chilled. How I still summon you towards me, that noisy joy, that winking and coruscating charm, moving like a suit built from feathers, lighter than bacon, steeper than the sky, with your hip sway girlish when you wanted it, then chainsawed under your Timberline aftershave. You flounced toward me with your kindly abrasions, your mincing mischief, your sportive glee. In a club called the Lost and Found, how you held your head stiff as a 12-inch ruler, while your hips pepper-milled the disco floor, strewn with white-hot diamonds, your sneaker feet bouncing under the trampoline and the amphetamine of your smile. Infant of Prague. Climbing up the back staircase after our night swilling at the bars, you saw a paper bag squatting on the landing. You grabbed my hand in terror, half mock, half real, and gasped, "Oh my God, it's an infant of Prague." Only you could have conjured that crowned Christ child with the orb that the altar guild outfitted in different gowns for each liturgical season, purple for Lent, white for Easter, on a side altar of a Roman Catholic church, out of a sack somebody had left in the dim light on a staircase. Only you could knuckle my funny bones so, your hand curling up, your fingers digging into my wrist as if holding on for dear life, while the world's raucous riddles and blasphemous hallucinations blew past us in a spasm of grimly glorious guffaws. This is the title poem, Far Cry. Though we couldn't hear it from where we lived, just north and west of us, the humid and eerie cry of gibbons imprisoned in the zoo hooted in rebounding ululations over the row houses of DC's Mount Pleasant. A truncated hiccup fused with the inhaled urgent coo of a woman trying to suppress the commotion of her passion so as to not disturb her neighbors. The cry repeated itself with the heft of a ritual syllable, accelerating, amplifying, crowding itself into the stolid mortar of the chimneys it brushed. It seemed to assert the primacy of impulse over deliberation, to warn that degrees of order are a fragile bulwark against the incursions of the whooping vocalizations of the hemmed in and the caged. Now your gone voice cruises over the roofs of Northwest Washington. Your old sexual hunger hunkers its pangs between the zippers and the condoms. Your lips rummaging the air for downdrafts, for the rise from the cellar holes, for the good stink of the chimney shafts. A gray mouse has drowned. A gray mouse has drowned in the watering can. It wanted, like you, to try that last living thing that would stave off a bursting thirst. I have composted it along with the banana peels and the strawberry tops, among the toenail clippings and the split ends. There it revives and hooks your old gray-green towel on its hip bones and paddles up the back staircase to the shower we shared on Wyoming Avenue. There, it greets me with your satin-bound grin and your sheep ear and your lynx chin gnawed into a glare. Hungry for some trick of time to redeem us from our old feuds, I sit on the edge of the toilet and listen to the thunder of your chortle and your crab. Your mouse self noses its aquiline way into my jocund expectation. And I shimmer the shower ions with the mirage of you wreathing me with the steam of an unalloyed joy. Second Tuesday. The moon lays its sheen on the neighbor's slate roof on the second Tuesday after your death. All the stone shingles pool in a circle of light, and the air's lost its tremor of moth. All your gone whispers are grinning me down. All your licked grimaces are ferrying me off to some speedway of snicker and frown. Riding the long route of your emptying palms, you're still waving me down from the night. Steering me close to the highway, you row between mountains dubbed equinox and green. Over us both, the white and clamoring moon, dividing its spell from its curse. Over us both, the hot breath of goodbye, scalding our scalps and our wrists. I want to read this poem tonight for Ricky, who mentioned her affection for thrifting. My friend Phil was the kind of person who would buy a thermal long sleeve jockey undershirt at the jockey quote unquote outlet store in Manchester, Vermont, when he could have, for $70, when he could have gotten it for 15 at Target. Fashion. You were horrified, no doubt, by my goodwill get-ups. 1 year later, you were still scandalized by the striped sweater I wore over a pair of cordovan pants that were popping with pimples of brightly colored thread. Another time, you picked disgustedly at the pills on my wool pullover, as if plucking a few of them would make them all go away. I wore that on top of some ill-fitting, high-riding white jeans, and you wondered if they were jodhpurs, as if I were off on a hunt with Jackie Kennedy and her set. How you loved her fashionably sunglassed-in sorrow, reconnoitering her grave with Bob at Arlington Cemetery the day after her burial. The eternal flame still lit by all her late husband's dalliances. The gas still piped in from the fracked out fields of an insatiable will to betray. I want to say that I loved you. And certainly I have. Loved the way you surveyed the sky, itching for news of the weather. Loved the way when I unfolded a joke or hurried you through a story, you'd hurl your head back and shake, every clogged artery shoving harder to uphold your laughter, your nicotine still bathing all your bypassed veins. But sometimes when you'd quieted, the pathogens of envy and contempt would infuse the air between us, spiraling out of your mouth, fetching themselves into gray-blue smoke rings that lassoed my juvenile vanity and wrestled me to the unloving dirt. I address the impossibility of conjuring you in verses that are merely descriptive. Your hair was the color of river sand. Your glasses magnified your wide eyes. You seemed to be shearing beyond my pupils to some stash box in my brain. Above your upper lip, an acre often plied by mustache-serious fingers. South of your belt, your snake with its blue jean hide was a fire break in the roughneck forest of your crotch. To the north, a khaki top with an immaculately white t-shirt that you had probably ironed. There were always men in the woodwork, splintering or shying under the wide rabbit trap of your eyes. There was always a feast waiting to be prepared in the scorching pockets of your salivary glands. Always a haunch waiting to be palmed, a genuflection waiting to be blessed. Death is the only. Death is the only triage that time can maneuver. Death is the impertinent eggshell left to shimmy down the windshield. Death is the impertinent egg yolk left to shimmy down the windshield. Words fail, but death does not fluster in the wake of its unpeeling. I want to say that because I have conjured you with such intensity, I have conspired with death to keep your oblivion at bay. What is it you would wish me to do with death? I can hardly avoid cranking death open to permit the ferocity of your predicaments to tattle me upright. Now I am in your mind's eye, an excuse for death to leave some dribs of you behind over the drab dray horse of time. Hearsay. I hear say that in the last years, your irascibility swelled. You worked your wrestling holes to promote convictions that others did not clench. A minor foible in a bistro by a server tended up a tizzy. Was it better then that I fractured our fixture with silent regret, a long disavowal, rebuffing your overtures with thin excuses? Writing you back with the electronic messaging you hated when you had asked me to call. Weary of your verdicts on my convictions and my comportment, I eased your stiletto index finger away, letting it point and puncture somebody else's silly shame. 2 more poems. Poets need to warn that there are only 2 poems left so that people don't walk out before they're done. Am I any closer? Am I any closer to a final embrace of the living ghost I have inspirited with all these choruses of you I have set to shouting? All these reverberations from our shared era, all these dioramas of you and your loving and imperious sweetness, your gentle and your startle. Call my name with your confounded affection. Glower at me with your roguish admonishments. Catch your palms on the stubble of my throat. I cannot leave you to history, nor to the cruel task of shuffling your extinction into a deck stacked with images that never maneuver you into the right hand. Before I read the last poem, I want to thank all of you for being such a wonderful audience, and thank Gunilla and the people involved in the Buffalo Corner reading for inviting me and sponsoring this. I forgot to say when I was talking about Gunilla that she is a very fine poet and memoirist, but I learned tonight that she's also a very fine performer. It's wonderful to hear you read, Gunilla. I have put in the chat for those of you who are on Zoom how you can order the Far Cry if you're interested. It's available at the publisher Ethel Zine and Micropress, and also at Roll Your Poetry Bookshop, which has an online function that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So before I read the last poem I'm going to sing, I'm not much of a singer, so you'll have to bear with me. It'll be very brief. The wind blew some luck in my direction. I caught it in my hands today. You finally made a tricky French connection. You winked and gave me your okay. I send you off with the words of a pop song looping in my ears. Bursting behind us now, the Atlantic in late May. Your piggy on my back then, the two of us jubilant horseshoes brawling backwards into the foam. We crossed the Chesapeake to get here, spinning the long span of the bridge at breakneck. The words of the Starbucks song, moonlight feels right, spangling our earlobes. Your smiles, demure and murderously limbed with the caution we are tossing to the wind. All quirk and plenteous play, and never a dull boy, never a moment not spent in the delirium of your trembling wish to resound with the spritzing bliss of a wave and a cock and a fist. Always and every afternoon to fish and simmer in your barefoot glow. Never a time like this to know that the future will find us, but never let us go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. I'm so glad you were here. I had three words in my mind as you were reading. Oh, to be eloquent. Oh, to be genuine. And oh, to be real. I think you were all these things tonight. Thank you so much. And now we usually, at this point, we invite everybody for a question and answer. Like any question, you can come up here, speak in the microphone. You can ask Tom on Zoom, Ricky is here. People who are zooming in, raise your hand or just put up that little yellow thing that says, I have a question. So, and if anybody, yeah, please. Mr. Daly, oh, the question was this American sonnet form that I think I described it as well, never mind. Yeah, not deconstructed. I was thinking about colonized. That instead of putting inside you all the rules from the other places. Tom, would you like to take this question?
So I didn't hear the question. You have to repeat
The
it.
question is, what can you describe this American sonnet form?
All right. Well, first of all, I wouldn't say it was anti-colonizer, colonial. There's a lot of nonsense about politics and poetry. I once heard Derek Walcott say, "What is the arrogance of an imperial culture that teaches you can write poems without learning to rhyme?" But I mean, what was the arrogance of the Norman French who imposed rhyme on the Anglo-Saxon poetry? So I shy a little bit from political characterizations of breaking of forms. I don't think it's a revolutionary act. I think it's partly so basically Gunilla is right. It's the definition of American sonnet is a 14-line poem. That's it. There's no length, there's no limit on the words, no limit on the length or shortness of the lines or the number of syllables per line, anything like that. It's a sonnet only in the sense that it's a little song, which is what sonnet means literally. And there are all kinds of manifestations of them. Terence Hayes wrote a whole series of American sonnets in which I address my assassin. That was the title of every one of them. And they were all 14-line poems, but they're essentially, most of them are pretty much free verse, although Diane Seuss, who is the poet whose particular American sonnets we are studying, she won the Pulitzer Prize this year for poetry. She does a lot of what Kay Ryan calls recombinant rhyme, which is there's not a rhyme pattern per se, but she's rhyming internally, like from the second line to the fourth line, there'll be a rhyme, or there'll be chimes, assonantal chimes, the same vowel sound repeated many times. So different poets wield this form in different ways, but really the only requirement to call it an American sonnet is that it doesn't follow the formal structure of a Elizabethan or a Petrarchan Italian sonnet with the rhyme scheme and particularly in the Petrarchan sonnet, the turn at the 9th line, which is called a volta.
So we are both graduates of Chapel Hill. They had a very good English department back in the days. I don't know how it is these days. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Yes, please. You want to come up here? Yes, please.
So question for Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Enjoyed your poetry. I was curious if you have experienced, I'm kind of guessing you've experienced deaths of people from whom you weren't estranged. And, the sort of popular wisdom is that supposedly if you are estranged, it can be even harder, the loss, than someone that you were totally close to at the time of their death, And I was curious if you found that to be true, and maybe that inspired all those poems.
No, that's an interesting question. It's kind of hard to compare responses to deaths. It's sort of like trying to compare your siblings or your children. I mean, they're just such different phenomenon. Each one is peculiar and idiosyncratic to the person that you are feeling about. But for example, my father died of prostate cancer, and his death was a long decline, and he spent the last 6 months of his life paralyzed from the chest down. And so I spent a lot of time, fairly intimate time physically, with taking care of him. And I really felt that, we had a pretty complex and difficult relationship, but by the time he died, we had kind of resolved all that, and we forgave each other. And so afterwards, I certainly wept and wailed for a few days, but I didn't really feel, I felt like I had just accepted his death, and kind of, I miss him, I think about him often, but the death of Phil, this friend of mine, was so strange because I had no idea that he was so sick, that he was going to die he died of a heart attack. I had no idea that he'd had heart trouble because I hadn't been in touch in a few years. And I guess, I don't know. I mean, I had really resolved to like never see him again. I was so angry, but I think probably at some point I would have softened. So when he died, I was just left with this incredible feeling of bereavement. You know, I was bereft of a friend, but also, as I said, I was bereft of an opportunity to ever heal the rift.
Yeah.
And I still feel, I think about him often. He was like a brother in some ways, and with all the attendant trouble and joy that siblings can bring. But yeah, I mean, I think each death is marked by a very different kind of response. I do think that the deaths of anybody you're intimate with is like an earthquake. And there are aftershocks and tremors, and you're picking your way through the rubble, kind of blindfolded. There are different degrees for different people.
What I feel like your poems, the poems you read, it was a nice set because it really kind of explored, it shows people all the very conflicting emotions that can surround that kind of loss. So, you know, it was an interesting thing to see in poems. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask how long you've lived in or taught in Boston?
Since 1979.
Okay, yeah, we overlapped a little bit.
Where were you?
I was at Brandeis in 73 to 77, and then I worked at the Orson Welles Cinema. If you go back that, yeah, you would go back that far.
Yeah.
Between Harvard and Central.
Yeah, I worked in a restaurant there, and we went on strike and were attacked by a thug from the kitchen, and it was quite dramatic.
Yeah.
Huh?
What restaurant?
Well, there were actually two strikes before ours. There were restaurants called the restaurant at the Orson Welles restaurant, and then ours was called Eugene's.
And I worked at the Orson Welles Cinema.
Yeah, right. What year were you there?
77 to 86, it burned. There was a fire, and it was.
Wow. Yeah, well, you must have known Tom Neal and Ken Winokur, and.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Strange, small world.
Thank you very much.
What's your name, by the way?
Jan Sandberg.
Jan Sandberg. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
If you come in person sometime, then, because we don't want to bore people with our catching up, right?
Yeah, right.
We're good friends. She's a good dog person. Anybody else had a question that you wanted? Anybody on Zoom? Or are we kind of ready to wrap up? Yep. So, I did want to mention that we have some interesting people coming to the Buffalo Corner. Next month, Nancy Baird and Carol Townsend are two local but very well-known writers and poets. In December, we have Charles Cote from Rochester will come in person. He's a therapist, psychoanalyst, something. It will be very interesting combination of poetry, words, and his specialty. And also Paul Nemser, who was here. He's a good friend of Tom's, and he was here visiting through Zoom from Boston last December. He's just a fabulous writer, so if you have any chance to come and hear him, you won't regret it. We also have in January our very own Buffalo Poet Laureate, Gillian Hainsworth, is coming with her spoken word poetry. I'm really looking forward to this. And she will be joined by a poet from San Francisco named Diane Frank. And like some of us, she combines music and poetry. She is a professional cellist in the San Francisco Orchestra. So that will be interesting. And then, I am losing my mind. Yes, in February, we have two Pulitzer Prize winning poets joining our humble Buffalo Corner. One is our own Buffalo poet, Carl Dennis, from UB, and also Philip Schultz, who is one of the best poets I can think of, especially Jewish poets. So I really recommend that. And then in March, since we're talking about femininity and language, today it's been kind of a theme, Alicia Ostreicher will join us from New York City. So that will be spectacular. Then in April we have the Open Poetry Month, so all of you, if you want to come and read, we'll just have it the way we used to. And in May we always have, 1 month, the Mystery Month of the Buffalo Corner, chaired by Gary L. Ross. And so he will bring in some of the mystery writers, and it's usually a very popular event. And then in June we have the names have not been confirmed yet, but we have names on the table. So please come back or Zoom in, and good night. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Rookie. It's been a very nice evening. I'm so glad. Good night.